Hello, class. Hi. Just got the shirt.
Hi, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's for you guys. It's kind of for me, but I was thinking about you guys. Uh, this this pandemic life has brought out some nice things too. There's a guy who's playing I really like, and he started doing these. He's a guitar player. He started doing these lessons, maybe 15, maybe 12 to 18 minutes each, and now he's done over 100 of them. Everybody loves it. It's this guy. If you're interested, if anybody plays guitar at any level, you would be you would it would serve you well to check out Tom Bukovac on YouTube. Anyway, he starts every lesson with the little jam, and then he'll say, "Hello, class." They're called homeschooling, the homeschooling lessons. Anyway, he's been chosen as the top studio guitar player many years in a row. He's a Nashville professional. He'll play anything. Okay, so anyway, it's a good day. It's a beautiful day. And I thought I was going to pick like 4 or 5 things to show you from your golden projects just to celebrate your talent. But then I realized I can't pick. So we're gonna check them out, all of them, the whole group. So we're gonna see 17 of them. I was surprised that not everybody turned theirs. Oh, there's one more. Just came in. Oh, I got that one already. Okay, so got 17 projects, and we're gonna look at them right now. Uh, these are really great. Just collectively, I'm going to say you guys are super talented. It's all anonymous. I would not even like jump up and say, "Hey, that's mine." Okay, so no names. So just enjoy the talent that you guys have collectively. You know that's something that's actually changed a little bit over the years. When I started teaching, I don't think we announced test scores in class, but almost. Like people were not very careful, with the whole privacy thing. Um, but nowadays, uh, we keep basically everything private that can be kept private, which is almost everything. So we just enjoy the good things, and there's some really beautiful designs here, and I'm not going to pick favorites. That's why I'm going to show them all. Converting. This is all too exciting. Oh, today you're going to see some cool stuff. You're going to see some really neat things. We're going to be talking about fractals. And yeah, I hope you're sitting down for that part because it's going to make your head spin. And I'll warn you beforehand, but I'm not even kidding. Okay, so I just made this, so I apologize if some of the, something's not right in the middle, or it's not presented in the best possible light. But like I said, I just slapped this together. I was going to pick a few favorites, but I just couldn't. Too many good ones. Too many good ones. Like, how about that? To me, this is just great. By the way, I'm not going to give a whole spiel about everything, everybody's work. We'll just enjoy them. But I think this is super clever, and it's the kind of thing that you wouldn't necessarily know has anything to do with the golden ratio. If you're running a company that's about fishing, you could totally use this. This is just a wonderful design that may or may not have anything to do with the golden ratio. It's just really cool. Of course, we know it's got to do with that golden spiral. Like this one, the spiral, I could see it inspired people. And also, I'm really happy I showed you that YouTube clip. I didn't know if you guys are going to take that on, because it is a lot of work. But several people did. About a handful of you did the designs using these circles, Fibonacci circles with Fibonacci diameters. That when used, you're almost guaranteed to have some interesting applications of the golden ratio when you do that. The spiral is really wonderful. By the way, if you're interested in these leaves and leaf placements, like how nature tends to play this leaf placement, then you can look that up online. It is not coincidental. Nature will ultimately optimize anything, and leaf placement is no exception. The trees will put the leaves where they get the most sun. And it's amazing, but that actually has something to do with the golden ratio. So you can look that up. Leaves, plants, leaves, placement, golden ratio, boom. You'll be shocked. Very cool. Different type of application. Also different. But the same idea. We've got the Fibonacci diameters. This was cool. So there's a whole thing now with the with this kind of recognition thing. I think was it Apple? Some companies starting to do palm print. You just put your palm over the camera and boom, you're in. Because the palms are just as unique as the fingerprints. I actually don't like the facial recognition thing because, I'm not always this beautiful. No, that's not true. But if you have something on your face, you may not recognize it. Now this is really nice because it's so abstract, and it's got a cool asymmetry to it. Plus, I like the colors a lot. Reminds me of some of that Kandinsky, the good stuff from Kandinsky. Took me a second to realize that these are different. Yeah. This, I'm guessing, took a lot of work. I mean, all of these took a lot of work, and I applaud you for doing that work. But this looks like it took a while, but I can see where these things have been used. Any circular arc here, like these, like these here, are separate. These are from separate circles, and everything is circular. So, yeah, it's no small feat. Somehow I feel alive and flourishing when I look at this one. Here's a fresh look at a butterfly. Very cool. Is it a butterfly? I don't even know, and I don't really even care. But it's got a butterfly kind of structure to it a little bit, but it may be something else. Yes, we saw a snail there somewhere. This is cool. This this reminds me of the Last Dinner, or I mean, what was it? Last Supper. Da Vinci's Last Supper. It's the same kind of breakup into segments. And finally, a lot of times that's what I'd rather be doing. Not right now. So thank you guys for sharing that stuff. This any kind of artistic work is always an intimate look at the artist. You can't really do these in a kind of impersonal way, or really any kind of art. Like you got to put yourself in there. And so I appreciate yet another look of you guys' characters and your artistic prowess. So I appreciate that. Thank you very much. These were great. So again, I've mentioned this a few times, but if you are missing something, then it's not too late to turn it in. You can always turn stuff in late. They will be marked late, as you know. So I'm going to put zeros for those people who did not submit anything yet, but you can turn that into a 7 when you submit your stuff. With a 30% penalty for submitting late. Oh, I see that there was one that was submitted between the start of class and now. Okay, that one I'll accept as being on time. Okay, there we go. Now, next, we're going to look at some cool pictures and talk about a topic. We're not going to get too deep into this topic, but I'm going to show you some concepts about fractals, and then at the end I'll kind of explain what, or maybe next time I'll explain what I expect you to know as far as the math of it. What will show up on the test. Oh, by the way, so Thursday, no class. I have to. So we're house hunting currently, and we realized that Thursday afternoons are actually kind of crucial sometimes for these appointments. So we're gonna, and we usually miss those, but this one Thursday I'm gonna do that, and hopefully we'll land our dream house. Okay, so anyway, you will. Thank you. You will not be responsible for the kind of the big picture of the fractal. However, you are welcome to enjoy it, and I will then, at the end, or maybe next time, tell you exactly the kind of calculation that you would need to know how to do well on that part of the test. There's a test coming up. I think we said May 11th. If you have a problem with that date, then we can sit down and figure something out. We'll be able to work it out. I do want to be accommodating to everybody. So if somebody has 3 other tests that day, then let me know, and we'll work on another time. And if there are several people, then we can have several people take it at a different time. That's fine. All right, so fractal geometry. Now, these pictures here are just a little weird. And the one on the left there is more of a I was going to say modern invention, but it's not a modern invention. It's a modern discovery. This has not been invented, but it was discovered in the late 70s, and we're going to get into that set later today. This one's called the Mandelbrot set. Mandelbrot set. There's a guy named Mandelbrot who may still be alive, actually. I met him once. He was giving a talk at where I used to work, and this geometry is some of the coolest things you'll ever see. So I thought this guy was like going to be just the coolest guy. It was not the case. He was like he's an economics professor, actually. But anyway, super smart, and he came up with this set, or he discovered the set, and it's so simple to explain, but when you see the geometry that's behind this thing, it will blow your mind, and I will have to sit down for that. Now, what would that have in common with this picture on the right, which seems ancient almost? All right, well, let's move forward. We'll find out. Now, this here, I could have grabbed a twig from when I was in the park just a moment ago. I was trying to teach my son how to play badminton, and yeah, he got the bad part, but the minton we're still working on. But the picture here is it's actually not a natural thing. This is not a real twig, but this is the kind of object that you will find in nature, isn't it? So there's some kind of math that will get us to a sort of a natural look. And let me show you the next slide. So that first one was computer generated, and so is this one. And the trick here is this: we start with the straight line, and then we do this alteration to it. We take that straight line, and we separate these little parts from it. Okay? So in the end, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 straight things coming out of it. Right? So if this first part here we call step 0, then this part would then be step 1. And the next piece here would be step 2. Now, what happened between step 1 and step 2? We did exactly the same thing to every one of these 5 line segments as we did to the original straight line, going from step 0 to step 1. So this line segment here, sticking up from on the left side, notice how it's split 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ways. And the same thing with each one of these, right? In the next step, we go a step further. Each one of these straight lines will now get the same kind of treatment, same kind of alteration as we did going from step 0 to step 1. The step 1 is always the kind of the defining step, right? So there's really with these fractal constructions, there's really only one decision to make, in a way. What do you do first? So here, starting with the straight line, the thing that they did here, I did not generate this one, but the thing that they did here was split it up into these, into this shape. And then you just keep repeating that. Now these are called iterations. So step 1 to step 2 is an iteration. You do another round. Step 2 to step 3 is another iteration. And then this thing on the right here, maybe you do a couple more and then put a little color on it. We don't even have to go all that far. Maybe it's like step 8 or something. And those leaves will fill out nicely. The first step was so cleverly constructed or thought out that the upshot, the final outcome, I mean, in a sense, there is never a final outcome, because you could think of this as an infinite process. But once you put the color on it, you see, oh, yeah, those things kind of cluster up nicely. Oh, they look like leaves. Look at that. So it turns out, this is, of course, computer generated, but it turns out that nature works in this way. So what you're going to see today quite a bit are pictures from nature. Fractal geometry turns out to be nature's geometry. And nature doesn't have so many, like right angles or some kind of fancy wallpaper symmetry or things like that. I mean, there's some of that. But really the overarching geometrical theme in nature would be that of fractals. And we didn't realize that for a long time. All these thousands of years that humans have been here and talked about geometry, the last several thousand years, they never realized even the existence of fractals until about like 100 years ago. But now when we start looking at these various objects from nature, it's like, oh, there's another fractal. That's another fractal. Now, the word that we have for this kind of thing that we're looking at now, and let's just go ahead and look at a leaf. The word we have here for these kinds of objects is called self-similar. I'll write that down here. Fractals are self-similar objects. Oh, objects. Oh no, I can't have that. You guys kidding me? Fractals are self-similar objects. Repetition's good for learning, right? So fractals are things that have these different levels or layers. It's like you can zoom in and it looks similar at various levels. Like look at this leaf, for instance. There's the big picture. Down the middle, you have this spine, straight line. And from that spine, you have multiple, I guess we could call them bones or veins, whatever, coming out of it. So the red, what's put down in red would be like, they call it scale 1. If you look at how this thing is, if we're going to reverse engineer this, right? So we're starting to get into the layers, what's going on here. So then if you look at one of these straight lines, which is done here in blue, it's the same thing. It's a straight line like a stick, and then off that stick you have these smaller sticks that are like sticking up at an angle. And you can go down the scale or down to the next level, and then it becomes hard to see, but I bet it's still happening. Even after, you know, they stop putting in the color codes here, there's still stuff going on like that. Because that's how nature seems to operate. That they found a way to optimize the function of whatever anything is doing. Like a leaf, you know, whatever the leaf's job is, the nature will find the best way to do it. Sometimes it takes a really long time. Now, looking at this one makes me think of cell phones. Do you know why? Why am I thinking of cell phones looking at this leaf? It turns out that the cell phone antenna, and I believe this is actually a realization that happened in Finland, in my home country. I think Nokia was the first one to start doing this. They started making the cell phone antenna a fractal, so that they could squeeze in a lot of antenna length into a small space. And doing it in this kind of self-similar fashion was just the way to do it. You can maximize the little bit of real estate that you have there inside the cell phone, because you want your antenna to be long, so that it has great sending and receiving properties. And remember that the first cell phones, this is probably before your time, but they used to have an antenna that was sticking out. And even with that clumsy design, but you'd have to pull it out sometimes. Like some of these phones, you'd have to actually literally pull out an antenna, and they still didn't work very well. But then they started making the cell phone antennas like this leaf. This leaf or this plant's been doing it for I don't know how long, maybe millions of years. Nature figured this out way before we did. I actually don't have a picture of a cell phone antenna. I should probably find one here. By the way, do you know what we're looking at here? Is this the latest picture from Mars? Yes, it's tree bark. This is the kind of thing that this could be from Iceland, with the volcanoes spewing all that lava, and then the lava cools off, and it forms these kinds of shapes. And it could also be from even further out, from some unknown planet, or it could be tree bark, like you guys said. And this one is tree bark. One of the characteristic things of fractals is that it's hard to tell often how close to the thing you are. Are you like right up close? Are you sort of intermediate distance, whatever that might be? Are you really far away? Could be hard to see sometimes. Broccoli is another fractal. you think about the whole thing, and you can kind of chop off a little piece of it like this, and then you realize that piece has these bumps. Each one of those, like here's a bump, right? And inside or on this bump, there's lots of little bumps. If you look at, if we had a microscope, we could look at each one of those bumps, and it would be bumpy as well in that same kind of fashion. We don't necessarily think about that when we're eating broccoli, but it's there. It's not making big noise about it, but it's been like this for a long, long time. We just didn't know where to look. Here's a computer-generated picture, but it does look an awful lot like a fern. And yes, absolutely, ferns are some of the best examples of natural fractals. See how there's a little bit of a curved spine here, and then from that you have a number of things sticking out, and then if you look at that next level, it's working exactly the same way. Fractal. By the way, it's mentioning this word dimension here. Dimension. Now what they're talking about is there's a concept called fractal dimension. Now we're not going to start calculating those, although they're not difficult to calculate. But I'm going to talk about the idea of fractal dimension just a little bit, because I think you'll appreciate knowing something about that. So a line has dimension one. A line is a one-dimensional thing. And then two-dimensional things would be something like a rectangle or a triangle or a leaf, something like that. Flattened out leaf. Now, fractals have dimensions that are between 1 and 2. See, they only used lines in making this fern, fractal fern, but because the lines fill up the space so much, if you think about this leaf as the process or the upshot of an infinite process, then those leaves get so filled that they're almost two-dimensional. So we have so much line in there that it becomes an almost two-dimensional object. But we just made that with lines. So how fractal-like something is can be determined from the dimension. And so the closer to 2, the fractal dimension, the quote-unquote more fractal or more fractal-like the object is. Something like 1.2, 1.3, there would be some fractal qualities, like maybe that tree bark would be like a 1.1 or 1.2 or something. But then maybe a fern, a real natural fern might be something like 1.6, something like that. So you can kind of measure the fractalness of something, the fractal quality. So does anyone know what this stuff is here? Does this look familiar to anyone? Japanese paintings. Yep, Alina, you're right. I don't remember offhand who is said to have made these, but they are hundreds of years old. These two on the left, this one and this one. And on the right here, yeah, this bottom left is a pretty popular one. It's a small part of a popular painting. So what's on the right here is a computer-generated object that is awfully similar. Like the basic characteristics of the paintings that these artists were doing are very much fractals. So here's a computer-generated object using these fractal type programs. And this is actually a shape that you might find in fractal objects. And it's pretty cool how these people were, they were describing nature visually, and it just came to them, this kind of shape. It's a natural shape, but we didn't even have the word for fractal at that point. But yes, people have realized that nature has some fractal qualities, but there was no way to really describe it until about 100 years ago. Now, so we talked about some objects, some weird sets of points or lines, starting at about 100 years ago, a little more in 40s, 50s. But nothing really happened until the 80s, when the computers got into the mix. And that's when this whole study of fractals really blew wide open, when we could do so many calculations per second. And fractals require a lot of computing power. So to study them properly, we needed that computing power. So as an idea, yeah, fractals existed maybe 100 years ago, or maybe 110 years ago. But we didn't really get to the bottom of them until later. Now, of course, that didn't stop Escher from messing around with the idea of a fractal. This fission scales is a fractal, since it's got that self-similar flavor to it. Self-similar means a part resembles the whole. That's one way to very generally describe a fractal. A fractal is an object where a part resembles the whole. And this would certainly be that. And if you pick that blue, that dark fish like this one, and if you started zooming in, theoretically speaking, of course, then the scales of that fish would look like fish. That would have scales. That would look like fish. That would have scales. It just alternates like that. And that's why this thing is self-similar, because you can go to any level. You can go 10 levels down, and it just keeps on going. So here's this little study of how similar these things look. And two of these are natural from nature, and one of them is not, but looks very natural. So on the left, we have a small section of snow on the ground. Now, again, if I was just given this picture, maybe I would have thought, oh, I'm flying over the Andes or the Alps or something, and I'm looking at some mountains. Nope. Turns out that that's just a little bit of snow on the ground. Now the middle one looks to me like it's, our friend broccoli making an appearance again. But no, this is actually way up. It's a section of forest. And then this thing on the right, that's it's a painting by Pollock. Is it the whole painting? It's hard to say, isn't it? Could be just a small corner. Now, if you know the metric system, 2.5 meters by 3.75, yeah, that's the whole thing. With Pollock's paintings, this is so cool and fascinating. He didn't know that he was making fractals, but they just turned out that way. And he studied, or he evolved as an artist to create these very natural looking pieces that, I don't think he even realized that they have this connection with nature, but they just seemed right to him. And it was only discovered later in the 80s that they could calculate the fractal dimension of all these Pollock pieces, and they're like, oh man, they are very fractal-like. What the fractal dimension will tell you is how much does it matter if we're zooming in or not, or how far we're zooming in. Like if we just take a piece of this, does it resemble the whole thing? And with Pollock's, it's hard to tell if you're looking at just a piece or the whole thing, or maybe just half of it or a quarter. It all looks the same. So it's got that self-similar thing going on in a major way. And it actually turned out to work I'll tell you a story. So Pollock was long gone. I forget when he died, but I think it was in the 60s or 70s. By the way, do you know the name of the technique that he invented when he was making these things? This one is, from the early 50s, but I think he worked on this stuff in the late 30s, definitely throughout the 40s, and most of the 50s, I believe. And so this one is kind of, one of the pinnacles and one of the better known ones. It's here in New York. They don't just call it drip. They call it action painting. And the action comes from the fact that you are literally jumping around and moving around, and you're splashing and dripping this paint, or different colors of paint from different buckets and different widths of these drips. And so anyway, so he just got so good at it, but this whole time he didn't know he was making these mathematical objects. Now, so what happened is, after Pollock had passed, two pieces by Jackson Pollock surfaced from somebody's attic or basement, and the people who found them were saying that we'll sell them for some number of millions of dollars. And then some people stepped up and says, oh, okay, that's a lot of money. Are these authentic? Are these the real thing? How do you figure that out? So of course they could do some kind of carbon analysis, and I'm sure they did, but they also did they also calculated the fractal dimension of lots of these Pollux pieces from the 40s and 50s, and then the new ones that were found. And they found that in the 40s, Pollux fractal dimension, or the fractal dimension of the Pollux pieces, crept up to about 1.6 or so, and they were consistently around 1.6 throughout the rest of his career. So when he developed this action painting technique, he developed something that could be measured with this fractal dimension idea. And it was very consistent. So they all stayed about at that 1.6 level. In other words, very fractal-like. So that, instead of just having lines, it's like you have so much stuff that those lines are starting to form two-dimensional objects. All right, so long story long, the two found pieces had a fractal dimension of about 1.2. And they said, nope, these are not authentic. They were purported to be from the gold age, like 50s, of Pollock's career. And he wouldn't have made those. He was so consistent with his fractal dimension. It was always up in the 1.6 area. They said he would not have gone down and made a 1.2. Like early in his career, yeah, it might have been a 1.2. But these were said to be from the later part of his career, and they said no, these are fakes. And so basically, I don't actually know what happened to the con artists, but anyway, they did not sell for millions of dollars. I don't know if they were penalized for this attempt. Probably. Anyway, so that's an interesting story of math coming to rescue when some Pollock art needed to be authenticated. Okay, now here's this thing that I will expect you to know how to do. It's called the Cook curve. And just like that, like those early slides I had, those twigs and those leaves, this has that kind of stepwise process. So stage one or stage zero or step zero is just a straight line. And then what we do, so I'm just going to draw a line here like this. And then what we do is we take the middle third of that line and we erase it. So I don't have an eraser, but I have a white pen, so I'll just do it like this. Okay, we erase the middle third, and instead of doing just a straight line like step zero, I'm going to take these pieces or copies of these pieces and like do a little triangle in the middle. So you can see here where it says stage one. What that means is this is 1/3. Like if the original has length 1, step 0 has length 1, then step 1 would have length 1/3 plus 1/3 plus 1/3 plus 1/3. So that would actually make 4/3. So you kind of do this bump, triangular bump in the middle. Now, so that's the major step. That's the major alteration. And then you do that going to the next level as well. So stage 2, everywhere where you see a straight line, you're going to do that triangular bump. triangular bump. You'll do that 1, 2, 3, 4 times. Going down to the next level, you're going to do it 1, 2, 3. You're going to do it 16 times. Notice that the length increases actually with every step, because you're going from I'll just do here length. You're going from length 1 to 4/3 to, let's see, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, and that 4. So that's 16 ninths. And the next one would be, oh wow, so 1/27. I can tell you that there's 64 of them. Because each time you go down a step, or you go a step further, I should say, you're increasing every straight line by 1/3. Now, I'm just going to show you a little math here. So we could think of step 0 as being 4/3 to the 0 length. So the length is 1, and in our next level, the length is 4/3. Our next level notice step 2, we're squaring the 4/3. Can anybody guess how I could write the length of the Cook curve at stage 3 using an exponent? Yes, I'm sure many of you could see that that's going to be 4/3 cubed. That's right, Matthias. And so, in fact, at stage M, the length of the Cook curve will be 4/3 to the M. However long you want to keep it going. Now, what that also means is that the theoretical construct of the Cook curve has actually infinite length, because this number 4/3 is greater than 1 if we take it to an infinite power. It becomes infinite. So 4/3 to a very, very, very large number, that goes to infinity. So you could have, notice that, but it's still in a pretty small space. Like, it's not taking up any more space, really. It's a really, really curious concept, because when you think of infinity, it's like, well, no, that's got to be huge then. Like, it's got to just blow up. It's not actually the way it works, interestingly. And you'll see here in the next one too. This one's called Sierpinski gasket. And you'll see that you can also have this idea of infinity and the infinitesimal in a very much restricted space. So here's how this works. So you've got a triangle, let's say equilateral, but it actually doesn't have to be equilateral, any triangle, but let's just say equilateral. So this would be step 0, just a triangle. Step 1, we connect the midpoints like this, and we essentially erase the middle part here. I don't, this is not a great program for this, because I don't have a thick pen. But anyway, so step 1 of the Sierpinski gasket is taking out the middle piece of a triangle. You can see how this big triangle in the middle would be the step 1 to take that out. Step 2, you would take out the triangles in the smaller triangles here. You would take out the middle triangles in the smaller white triangles, right? So this level would be taken out at step 2. This level would be taken out at step 3. By the way, I'm going to come back to this, okay? So I'm not expecting you to just pick it up, you know, like a pencil. We're going to come back to this next Tuesday, okay? So don't worry if this is not quite sinking in yet. Don't worry about it. This is just my introduction. We'll talk about the Cook curve and the Sierpinski gasket. We'll talk about them next Tuesday. And there's no project on this, okay? So don't worry. So what happens then is as you go further into the sequence, you are erasing more and more and more of that original triangle, because every time you go down a level, you're taking out a bunch of these little triangles. So what actually ends up happening is that you get this, they call it a gasket. It's almost, there's almost nothing left, but it is actually, what's left has area 0, has no area, but it has infinite length. If you look at the lines that are left in the gasket, they're going to go to infinity, but the area that's left in the triangle goes to nothing. So you got like infinite boundary of nothing on nothing. It's a pretty weird concept. Okay, again, I'm going to come back to this in a week. Now, I want to talk about this special set that they call the Mandelbrot set. So we'll come back to this, some of the terminology and stuff later. So the Mandelbrot set is this look, you know, this is the main shape. Okay. Now, what's special about it is that it is self-similar. So when you go to the surface of this thing, you're going to find all kinds of cool shapes. But not only that, but this main shape keeps popping up. So when you zoom in to the surface of this thing, by the surface, I mean not in the middle, okay? So you go to these kind of scraggly looking areas, right, on the boundary. And when you do that, you're going to find very, very cool looking things and very trippy colors. The colors come from, all right, I left myself a little too little time for this. So I'll talk about this more next time too, but it looks complicated, but I can guarantee you, I can explain it to you in layman's terms next time pretty quickly. So again, you won't be tested on this, but just enjoy it for now. It's a simple explanation that I'll be happy to give. But I want to finish off with this video that you have to sit down for. So what you end up seeing when you go to the boundary of the Mandelbrot set is these cool colors and the reappearance of the main shape. And the process continues forever. This main shape that's here in the middle has all the same properties as the original shape. So it also has those scraggly boundaries, and in those scraggly boundaries you'll see all kinds of dynamic action. By the way, the colors you can set the colors how you want it, but basically what it is um, a sequence will go to infinity or it will not go to infinity. But if it doesn't go to infinity, you color it black. If it goes to infinity, you can see how fast it goes to infinity. And if it goes really fast, you can color it certain color. If it goes a little slower, you color it certain color, that kind of thing. I'll talk more about that next time. But anyway, so you end up seeing these awesome looking shapes. And I want to finish off showing you a video, and I don't know if I can do the sound. Uh, there's actually tons of these online because this is just so phenomenally fascinating stuff. And so people made these uh, exploration videos for the Mandelbrot set. So I just looked up. There's just a ton of them here. But here's one. So when we watch this, keep in mind that the process does go on forever. Like it's an infinite thing. You just get tinier and tinier and tinier, and you go infinitesimal. Okay. So this is they're calling it the deepest Mandelbrot set zoom animation ever. I'm not sure if that's true, but it's pretty incredible. Okay, so here we go. So we're about to start the descent. I'm going to start zooming in. And it actually doesn't really matter where you zoom in. You're going to get these crazy dynamics everywhere. think you get the idea. So what's really, really cool is a lot of stuff actually, but depending on where you start the journey, you're going to get different flavors of this psychedelic action. And it literally never ends. Like you could just keep going forever. And there's a lot more to say about that. In fact, I took a whole course, a graduate level math course in the Mandelbrot set and other interesting objects from a field that's called complex dynamics. So if you're interested in complex dynamics, there's a lot of cool stuff in there. Something not maybe quite so crazy, but related are what are called Julia sets. And so I studied those a lot. And so anyway, enough of my blabbering. I hope I didn't make anybody seasick. It blows my mind every time I look at these things. And again, if you look at a different video, depending on where they start that, descent into the surface of this thing, you're going to get different looking pictures. And here you could see there was a lot of these kind of fourfold rosette-like things, and then a bunch of other shapes. But if you look at a different video, you might get a completely different idea. And let's just look at something real quick here. That's similar, but just got a different flavor. Yeah, that butt crack's one of the best places. Okay, so yeah, it just keeps on going, and I actually like the second one better personally. But anyway, if you want to trip somebody up, look up from YouTube Mandelbrot Explorer or Mandelbrot Zoom or something like that, and you'll get those, lots of them. Alrighty. Well, with that in mind, uh, again, no class on Thursday. I'm going to send you a schedule of what is, what's going to be happening for the rest of the semester. But we have now covered everything, or maybe I should say uncovered. And on, you know what I'll do? I'll send you some review sheets that you could do for next Tuesday. And we can start the review for that second test. And then, but the focus next Tuesday will be on the kinds of calculations that I showed you briefly today, the Cook curve and the Sierpinski gasket. Those are the two things you'll be responsible for from this fractal lesson. And let's see, next Tuesday is May 4th. So we'll have review on 4th and 6th, and then we'll have the test on the 11th. That's basically what's left. So only 2 review sessions and the test. Okay, does anyone have any questions right now? All righty. Enjoy your day. Thank you so
Hi,
much.
Professor. Thank you so much.
Bye.